Okay, this video is going to be Pearl Harbor Reconsidered. I'm going to reshoot this here in the Sunken Gardens, the Japanese Sunken Gardens here down in San Antonio in Brackenridge Park. I'm going to use this as a backdrop because this was an abandoned lime quarry, and it was redone by a family named Jinga, who was hired by the city to do something with the eyesore. It was a limestone quarry, and they did something good here. More on that later. So we're going to go back to Pearl Harbor Reconsidered. This is an aerial view of Pearl Harbor the day before it happened. There's Fort Island in the center, the Navy Yard beyond it, and Hickam Fields in the upper left there. An overview of the actual battle. The first attack consisted of high-level bombers, dive bombers, torpedo bombers, and fighters. Also, just before that, they sunk one of the midget submarines that attacked. And want to go over some of the reasons behind Pearl Harbor, and here's an outlay of Pearl Harbor and the attacks on it. The Shaw exploding, the Oklahoma capsizing, the Nevada torpedoed, and the Arizona sunk. Well, and this is all from the, using this as a backdrop, the History magazine, which is pretty cool. So, Roosevelt was trying to get us into World War II. He wanted to defend Europe from Germany, but he needed to get us in there. We were doing the Lend-Lease program to Europe and to Russia to fight the Nazis, but they needed us. Much like in World War I, the theory was the army with the last million men would be the one that wins. So we were insulated in World War I and World War II. We let Europe and England bear the brunt of the fighting, and this time we added Russia to it. Germany basically spent the majority of their energy destroying Russia. Of course, Russia ended up, we crushed them along with Russia, but make no mistake about it, Germany was bled dry fighting Russia. So if there's a book by a man named Victor, and he tried to debunk that Pearl Harbor was allowed to happen or encouraged to happen by Roosevelt and the people in the administration. And after if you read it, he comes to the conclusion that his hypothesis was wrong, that Roosevelt did let the Japanese attack happen. If you'll recall, there were no the cutting-edge ships at the time were the carriers, and none of those were in harbor at the time. Now, let's consider the actual attack. So, all but 3 of the ships that were sunk in Pearl Harbor were refloated. By the end of the war, I think 98% or all but one was done by the end of they actually participated in World War II. A lot of them were, the old battleships were used for bombardment at Guadalcanal and Iwo Jima. So if you're going to get beat up, the best place to get beat up is in a hospital, right? Because you could get treated right after you get beat up. Well, ships in dock, that would be the best place to get just, bombed and destroyed, because A, you're only in about 25 feet of water. The sailors that weren't initially killed or trapped beneath decks just had to swim, 50, maybe 60 feet at the most to get back to shore. Now, if there was a 2-hour heads up about the actual attack, they could have gone out to sea. Maybe they're 10 miles out in the Pacific Ocean, the Japanese fleet catches them. They're caught with their pants down, they're unprepared, they all get sunk. Now you're talking losses. All those ships, you know, instead of saving 70% of all life on the ship, you're losing 90% of all the life on the ship in deep ocean water, because all the ships would have been out there. There would have been too much chaos. So the fact that they got sunk in the harbor, that was the best place they could have gotten sunk. Like I said, the sailors just, the ones that were above deck and weren't strafed, they could just jump off the ship and swim to shore. You know, like I said, it wasn't that far. The water wasn't deep. The ships got refloated, except for the ones that turned over or the whole bottoms were blown out where they couldn't repair them. I had an uncle that was in the Navy at the time, and he immediately got sent to Pearl Harbor, and he told me that he was doing guard duty at Pearl Harbor. And I remember that happened in December before Christmas, and he said up until just before Christmas you could still hear sailors tapping SOS that were trapped on the overturned ship, caught in air pockets, and eventually they stopped. He said right around Christmas. He said it was actually, it stormed a couple of times, and that was a good time for that to happen, because you couldn't hear him tapping on the bottom of the ship SOS time after time. So yeah, that was the best place for it to happen. And like I said, here's some more of the tea gardens here. There's all kinds of koi and stuff in the water here. I'll try to find them. And like I said, this was a limestone pit that they used for quarry, and they hired Jenga to straighten it up. Jenga died in '38 before the attack on Pearl Harbor, but once the attack happened, his family was interned. They were finishing up the project, and that's another thing Roosevelt did. They interred the Japanese. Of course, we didn't inter the Germans, people of German descent, after, with the Germans during World War I or II with Hitler. Only the Japanese. Another good thing, I guess, that our brave Democratic President FDR did. But anyway, it was a pretext to get into World War II. And like I said, I don't think they planned out to the minutia that they were going to be able to refloat the ships, that was the best place to, that they could, save most of them. That wasn't the in the planning. The battleships were. Ooh, here's a big koi in the water here. There you go. Looking good there. But the plan was there was a letter between a man named Albert Pike and Mazzini back in 1875, where they outlined the 3 world wars that for want of a better term, the Illuminati or the New World Order wanted to do. And World War I was to get rid of the Romanov dynasty and reshuffle the royalty in Europe. Now, if you read the letter talks about the Third War being a war between the Mohammedans and the forces of Zion, which they helped create. Now, they called them the Mohammedans back then, but it's Islam. So this war that's been fomenting has been in the works for 135 years now, 140 years. They got infinite planning, infinite patience to execute their plans, and all the big wars are steps in that direction. Ordo ab chao. Anyhow, I got a little artifact. I brought this, some more pictures of the actual sunken gardens here. So this is a kind of a hammered out piece of, this is a document dated 1942, and it was about the Battle of Coral Sea, and it talks about the battle plan for it. This was declassified. Anyway, I found this in a guy's locker that I bought at an estate sale. He was involved in it. He was actually in Task Force 17. And he served in the Pacific. The only reason I bring this out, it's already kind of damaged. I'm going to try to UV light it and get, there's a little mold actually on it that I think I can clear up, and I'll press it. But I found this just last week that I bought it, and it's pretty cool. Like I said, I think I can clean it up quite a bit here, and I'll put it under glass after I get it. Like I said, I'm going to UV light it a little bit and clean it up as best I can. But anyway, this is the Battle of the Coral Sea summary. So there you go. I want to get this all documented in case I screw it up when I put it in the chemicals to get some of these marks off. Anyhow, Roosevelt pushed for Pearl Harbor to get Japan at war with us, and they knew it was going to happen. They didn't know exactly when it was going to happen, but that's how they do these false flag events. They let they get the people behind something through their outrage. And Pearl Harbor, galvanized us into, Roosevelt got reelected on keeping us out of war, so he needed a pretext. Everybody was yelling we needed to go to war. Now, on the other side of the family, all the adult males, one was already in the military, and the other three volunteered. One of them got kicked out because he was only 14. And then my mother had 3 sisters, and all of their husbands volunteered and joined in World War II. In the Army and the Navy. And so my family served a lot. None of them got killed. A couple of them got minor injuries. Family's got a tradition of serving. I served. I still do a little Department of Defense contract work now. Anyway, you got to keep an eye on the people in power. They'll the ones that smile and smile the most and tell you what you want to hear the most are the ones you can't trust the most. FDR was a real stinker. If he hadn't have done the New Deal, we probably would have come out of the Depression a lot earlier. But like I said, it was a consolidation of world power. And what happened after World War II is the U.S. ended up being the superpower after the end, not just through the because we didn't spend as much of ourselves throughout the war. We industrialized. We were the engine of democracy. We made everything for it, and so after World War II ended. Or just before World War II ended, there was a thing called the Bretton Woods Agreement. And in that, it was agreed that the U.S. would be the world currency. And so it was handed, but before that, the world currency was the British sterling. And so there was a peaceful handoff there. There's a thing called the Thucydides paradox, or the Thucydides puzzle. Anywhere the basis of it is that the old world power will fight to keep its status, and the new world power will fight it and overcome it, to supplant it. Well, this was a peaceful handoff of power from Great Britain to us. Not that many peaceful handovers from one empire to the next. And the Bretton Woods Agreement basically said, okay, the U.S., you're going to be the world reserve currency, but you got to promise not to print too much money. Now, we were still on the gold standard at the time. Now, remember, FDR made it illegal for you to own gold. You had to turn in all the gold that you had, and they paid you $20 an ounce. It's an executive order they passed.